Took a math test. Their scores are represented by these two box and whisker plots. Describe the similarities and differences between the two sets of scores. So here we've been given two box and whisker plots. One of them shows the math test scores for the first period class, and the other one shows the scores for the second period class. Our job is to describe the similarities and differences between these two sets of scores. Well, in order to help us interpret these box and whisker plots so that we can see the similarities and differences between the scores, let's go ahead and first identify some key values in each box and whisker plot. And we can keep track of them in a table. So to fill in this table, we need to find the minimum, lower quartile, median, upper quartile, and maximum for each one of our plots. So let's go ahead and take a look at the plot for the first period class. This top plot up here. To find the minimum, we're looking for the lowest score, the very smallest number on this plot. So we look all the way to the left. We see that's a 50. So the lowest score given in the first period class was a 50%. How about the lower quartile? Well, that's found by looking at the left-hand side of the box. That is a 70. How about the median, or that middle number? Well, the median is found by looking at the vertical line that is inside the box. We can see that has a value of 90. Now what about the upper quartile? Well, that is along the right-hand side of the box, which we see has a value of 95. Now what about the maximum, the highest score received on the test? We find that by looking all the way to the right, and we see that is 100%. Great. So now let's do the same thing for the second period class. We take a look at this plot. To find the minimum, we look all the way to the left on our plot, and we see a 40. Then to find the lower quartile, we look at the left-hand side of our box, and we see a 65. Our median, that middle number, is found by the vertical line inside the box. That is a 75. And the upper quartile, on the right-hand side of the box, is a 95. If we take a look at the maximum, or that highest score, we see a 100. Perfect. So now that we filled out this table, let's go ahead and see if we can use it and our plots to identify some of the similarities and differences. Let's take a look at the similarities first. So what do these two plots have in common? Well, if we just take a look at these scores, we can see that the first period and second period have identical scores for the upper quartile and the maximum. Neat. What does that mean though? Well, the upper quartile and maximum, that space represents the upper 1/4 of the class. So what we're seeing here is that the upper 1/4 of each class scored between a 95% and a 100%. Cool. Now, if we also take a look at these values and at the plots, we can see that neither plot seems to have any outliers or any values that are way on either end, way large or way small. We can see that they have the exact same maximum, and the minimums are almost the same, 50 and 40, which we can also see in the plots. So there are no really big outliers or really low scores here. Cool. Okay, now that we have some similarities, let's go ahead and see if we can identify any differences between these plots. Well, let's see. We can see that the maximums are both the same, but the minimums are different. The first period class had a minimum of 50%, while the second period class had a minimum of 40%. So the lowest score in the second period was actually lower than the lowest score for the first period, which we can also see in each one of the plots. Now, what that does to our plots is it makes the first period plot a little bit more squished than the second period plot. So the second period plot actually has a wider range of values. So we can say that the second period class had more variation in their scores, or a wider range of scores. Neat. Okay, what else do we see? Well, if we just take a look at these numbers and compare each to each other, we can see that the first period actually beat the second period in each one of these key values, except for the upper quartile and the maximum, where they had identical values. Well, we can actually use that to make a generalization. We can say that in general, the first period seemed to do better overall against the second period. So it looks like the first period overall did better than the second period, even though they tied in the upper quartile and maximum. That first period has a better score in every other category. So now we have identified some similarities and differences between these plots.